Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Wise Decision Maker Show, where we help you make the wisest and most profitable decisions. My name is Dr. Gleb Tsipursky. I'm the CEO of Disaster Avoidance Experts, the future of work consultancy that sponsors the Wise Decision Maker Show. And I'm joined today by Jeff. Jeff, can you please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do?
Thanks, Dr. Gleb. Jeff Williams here. I work for Paychex. I've got a couple of responsibilities for the firm. One of them is for our mid-market clients. So that's for our bigger customers. And I'm responsible for their satisfaction and the operating performance and the financial performance of that business. And I'm also accountable for our HR solutions business unit. So the HR services that we sell to all of our clients, those services run through my groups.
And thinking about the HR services in particular, one of the things you're focusing on is hybrid work. How do you do that
hmm
effectively? Flexible work. Tell me a little bit about what you've learned. What are some of the benefits of hybrid work from your perspective?
Sure. They probably go into the categories of what's great for the employee, what's great for the employer, and
Mhm.
then what's great at the intersection. So I think for
Mm.
the employee, what we've really seen coming out of the pandemic, no big surprise, but our research tells us that maintaining hybrid work arrangements are really important for workers' well-being. And
Mm.
they're important in an inflationary environment to make sure those workers are controlling their
Mm.
costs of work. So we see a worker who wants the flexibility that comes from a hybrid arrangement, and we're seeing that drive incremental satisfaction in their work experience and in their work-life balance. Then from a company standpoint, there's this opportunity in a very tight labor market still, despite some of the
Mhm.
headlines, to be able to recruit from a much larger applicant pool. So you can expand if you're not constricted with a commuting catchment,
Mhm.
you can expand your access to talent and skills pretty much wherever you can imagine getting them from. So that's a real benefit
Mm.
for employers. And then that intersection is finding presence with purpose. So when you do ask people together, you're doing it for things like deep collaboration and
Mm.
strategic planning and the things that matter to the company and to the employee both that can create a better business. So it's not just about being somewhere to be present, but it's about being somewhere to drive a better employment experience and a better business performance.
Those are definitely benefits, but we've also seen some challenges. I helped
Mm.
26 organizations figure out their future work policy, hybrid work, and we're definitely seeing a number of challenges that companies are trying to solve within the sphere of hybrid work. What have you seen as the challenges, and what are the best solutions to these challenges?
Well, I think we've got a couple of challenges
Mm.
that are persistent. I think one is how do you do long-term planning for facilities, for recruiting,
Mhm.
for business strategy, while some of this still feels a little unsettled. It still
Mm.
feels like we are getting back to work. We are returning to office. We are doing things, but I think those that are confident they have the long-term picture on this figured out
Mhm.
might be a little bit overconfident. I think for employers, there's a perception that if I can't see it, maybe it's not happening. And the
Mm.
ability to maybe command and control the work is
Mhm.
challenging from a tactical perspective. And then from a strategic perspective, how do I create similar bonds and similar culture to when I had everybody together? I think those are some real challenges around what's the
Mhm.
future of my firm if I can't see it and touch it every day.
Mm.
And I think for the employee, we've seen the statistics that would suggest pre-pandemic, we were experiencing about 1 in 5 having mental health challenges in the
Mhm.
workplace. Those numbers are moving towards 1 in 3. And
Mhm.
colleagues can feel isolated. They can feel like they don't have the help and support network around them that they used to
Mhm.
have. And they just maybe are not having the most healthy human interactions on a day-to-day basis. They're programming themselves every minute of every day, and they're not giving themselves room to breathe
Mhm.
personally, and maybe not feeling they're getting the support they need professionally. So that can be a difficult brew for the employee. And then there's just all the pragmatic challenges of what happens when equipment breaks, what happens when I need to do certain tasks that actually require me to be in an office or to be seen. There's just all the pragmatic issues of maybe I have, a workforce that's in the office. Maybe I've got one that's remote. Maybe I've got one that's globally deployed. And now I have this overlay of, there's lots of automation coming our way, which is creating new job types, new baskets of work, and the pace of change that we have to land all of this in it's accelerating on all of us. So I think you kind of put all of that together, and it's difficult to do business planning, and in some ways it's difficult to be an employee.
Yeah, I think that you're hitting the nail on the head that companies that are not figuring out the long-term implications. And one of the things I've seen is that companies just say, well, let's just go to the office 2 days a week or 3 days a week. And they're not realizing that you need to adapt and figure out how to do things differently. So let's talk a little bit about the challenges that you're seeing and how to solve them. So let's just starting with the first one, the seeing people. When managers are not trained on how to manage people when the people are working remotely part of the time, so let's say there are people coming to the office half of their time, and the managers are not seeing them half of the time. And that's really difficult for managers. So what should be the situation? How should managers be trained, or what should be the policy be to address that concern of companies, the command and control concern of companies around hybrid work?
Yes. Yeah, there's so many companies, Dr. Gleb, that I talked to who, really celebrated their ability to withstand going home over a weekend and standing up the company. And they all felt like, almost universally, the feedback I get is, we didn't know we were capable of this. When really pushed into an emergency situation, we did Herculean things. And we are very proud of that. I hear more pride about how companies handle COVID than I hear anything else about that time period. And it's really neat. But then there's a bit of this aftershock of, okay, what now? There was nothing to do then. So you experience these big productivity gains that have been a little bit elusive. We see productivity slowing a little bit. And the implication of that is, how do I keep accelerating my business when you're right? I now have some people that are coming in. I have some people that are not in. I have different standards for each. I think it's important to really step back and say, why? Like, why do I want people here Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday? What are we going to accomplish together that's going to attract the employee to want to be there and to allow them to bring the discretionary effort and caring to their job that's going to make a difference from a business performance perspective? So I think we need to appeal to things like learning, sharing, growth, common purpose. And I would encourage, anyone listening to this to really get grounded on what are the values and the purpose and the mission of your business, and keep reinforcing why you need presence in the framework of that. I think if you can keep bringing your people back to, this is why presence matters, this is why we want you here. It's not a punishment. It's an opportunity for us to build a better business. And whether you're in a healthcare business where you have an opportunity to serve patients better, or you're in a business like ours where you're giving clients the freedom to succeed, or whatever your why is, keep coming back to it. Because I think your employees want to feel a deep connection with what you're doing. And then, to the more pragmatic side, try and level out the playing field for those that are in and outside the office. And what I mean by that is, if you're making social time for those in the office, make social time on Zoom for those that are out of the office. If you're having very structured one-on-ones in person, make sure you're doing that as well. If you have monitoring capabilities and toolkits that maybe haven't kept pace with how quickly you send people home, make sure those things are, as much as you can, have a sense of fairness and equity and balance to them, across all of your populations. And I think if you keep grounded on some of those principles, keep high integrity, and maybe allow yourself a little bit of vulnerability with your employees that you haven't got it all figured out yet, and you actually need their help in the design of the future of work. I think you might be a little bit surprised on what your employees will do to help you figure all of that out.
Yeah, I want to build on that last point and circle back to
Mm,
what you were talking about
yes.
before in terms of the reinforcing the values. I was just literally yesterday, I did a half-day facilitation for our leadership team on figuring out their culture vision for the future of work, for their hybrid work policy. And one of the things I kept reinforcing is the need to get buy-in and feedback from their team members. And so not simply reinforcing the values, but getting buy-in, actually co-constructing the future of work policy, to have a team-led model where there's grassroots support and input into whatever will be the future. So figuring out, okay, why, not simply
Yes.
why I think people should need to be in the office, but why staff should think they should need to be in the office. Because frankly, when I talk to staff and feedback in doing surveys and focus groups, they tell me that, well, leaders tend to live within a couple of miles of the office. Their commute is like 5 minutes, 10 minutes. That's pretty frequent, especially in high price venues, whereas they might have a commute of an hour to there and an hour back. And the commute is the number one reason why they don't want to go to the office. So they're like, well, how can I make sure that my commute is minimized while still seeing people and socializing and doing things that are in the office that are best done in the office? So those collaborative activities. So what are your perspectives
Yeah.
about how leaders should actually go about co-constructing this, not to have the command and control system, which is definitely somewhat of a problem if you don't get staff feedback and buy-in, but how is this decentralization of power and pushing down of decision making and getting that feedback, how should it happen?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of pragmatic tips I might offer on how to tackle it. If we as business leaders believe that presence with purpose is indeed important,
Mhm.
let's figure out what we believe our boundaries might be. So our boundaries might be, we do want to see people 2 to 3 days a week. We believe that deep collaboration during that time fosters better business performance, builds a great culture, grows the next generation of leaders in the firm. Like that might be our belief system. So if you take that as that's what's important to us and as an employer, does it matter as much whether it's Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Monday, Wednesday, Friday? As an example, like our busy days may be in a certain time of week, but our employees may prioritize being able to work Mondays and Fridays at home. That might be the answer that works best for employees, and figuring out how to balance those needs of the presence, but also giving respect to when employees think those best days might be, I think creates another level of buy-in. And that commuting point is a great one. We get that one a lot, particularly as more and more people are coming back out into the world. Commuting times are inching back up everywhere. And it can be as simple as we'll go with flex time. So we'll allow that 8 hours to be 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. so we can come in before rush and leave before rush. Or maybe it's 10 to 6 p.m. and maybe it's a little bit different for those with different needs, but we're really going to be focused on the vast majority of people being in at our peak time. And just for simplicity's sake, maybe our peak time is from Wednesday from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. And in that time, we're going to have a town hall and we're going to have some collaboration meetings and we're going to have a hackathon and we're going to do that strategic ideation and we're going to have a lean event. So making it like, wow, there's actually things happening there that matter. My team's going to be there and we're going to do important things for the business and for my career at the same time. Like, I think you can start thinking of it that way. I think it can create a whole new level of co-design that can get you more buy-in.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I want to also dig there a little bit deeper into the point on that proximity bias. So the proximity
Hmm.
bias, the concept
Yes.
that we favor those who are close to us. I have a Harvard Business Review article about this. So this is definitely an issue in terms of the people who are spending some time working remotely, spending some time in the office, and when they're not in the office and other people are, that there's a concern that those people who are currently in the office will be treated more favorably. So what are your thoughts about strategies, tactics to address these sorts of issues?
Yeah, and I'd even build on your point a little bit because we saw it during the pandemic where there were socio-demographic differences on who is coming into work versus who is not. There's different accesses to quality and size of space for work from home environments. There's different access to quiet versus noise. So I think all of that can play in. What I would encourage business leaders to do is get really grounded on the data and on the performance standards that you have to take some of that nuance and bias out. So for example, you may have a performance standard that says we're going to turn around a certain type of case to our clients within 8 hours. That's very understandable. It's very measurable. You can create a standard whether someone's in or whether they're out of the office, and being transparent about this is what we expect from work, having fair reward systems and incentive systems in place, I think is really important. I think partnering with your people leader to make sure you don't have any unconscious bias that may be popping up in the way you're making decisions. My experience is that most business leaders really do want to do the right thing, and sometimes they just need a partner to ideate with, whether that partner's in front of them or on a Zoom, to get to the right answers. So I would say, a leader doesn't have to feel like they're alone in the challenge. I think test yourself with the data. Test yourself for any unconscious bias. Get help from your friends that are professionals and can give you a hand to make sure that you're being as transparent and as democratic as you can be.
Excellent. Now, as we're coming to the end of the interview, what do you think will be the future of flexible work? Where do you see this going in the next several years?
You didn't say I was going to need my crystal ball today when we said this.
Oh well, it's a gotcha
I
question.
I think some trends are here to stay. I think the more flexible work as a general macro trend is here to stay. I think that whatever form that takes, I think access to larger labor pools, more accommodation for the big commutes, all of that I think is here. I think what's also here is the nature of that employer-employee relationship will continue to evolve. We call it gig economy, contractors, 1099 employees, however you want to think about it. I think this idea of having a variety of roles as you grow a career, I think that one is here to stay as well. I do think there's a reconciliation coming in the facility space that needs to be digested. So, for example, today, we're bringing a lot of people home and bringing people home. We're bringing them back to work into real estate that's built for 5 days. Now, some people have closed offices, but the physical footprint that's left is really designed to operate at capacity. And we're not filling it with capacity. So I think efficient markets would tell us that there's a bit of a real estate reconciliation that needs to come over the next few years, which could mean different types of space considerations. Some of the futuristic designs of more collaborative spaces, less walled off offices. I think those trends are here to stay as well. And I think the continued globalization and automation of work is a tremendous disruption, but also a tremendous economic opportunity. So I think we're gonna continue to see more advanced technologies create better business outcomes, and I do think we're going to continue to see the world shrink a bit from an access to labor and an access to tasks perspective as well. So some of that is really exciting. Some of it probably feels a little bit disruptive, but all of that, I'd say just continue to wrap yourself, whether you're a business leader or whether you're an employee, I'd say the grit and the resilience and the self-confidence to navigate through this change and to trust your instincts and your data would be the most important advice I think I could give.
Excellent. I guess you did bring your crystal ball after all.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jeff. That was very helpful.
It's been an absolute pleasure.
And thank you to the audience for checking out another episode of the Wise Decision Maker Show. Please make sure to subscribe wherever you checked out the show and leave a review. It helps others discover the show, and it helps us improve the show.